Morning guys, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. What I thought we'd do today, I've had a lot of requests on the wrappings of the barrel that I did to create a more comfortable forearm on my M6 Scouts. I recently received the new M6 Scout from TPS Arms. That is in 357 Magnum over 410 shotgun. And really it is by and large the same firearm as the M6 in 22 long rifle 410. The main difference between this and the other firearm is the front sight post, which is more of an AR style front sight. Other than that, you have the same swivel peep sight here. Everything else is dimensionally pretty much the same, and the magazine well now receives 357 and 410 instead of 22 long rifle 410. So now what I thought we'd do today is just discuss how I wrap my barrels to make a more comfortable forearm on the front of this gun, because as of now, there's no snap-on type forearm guard you can put on this, although I have talked to TPS Arms about something like that in the future. For now, we're gonna wrap this one with paracord. Stay with me. All right, we don't need a whole lot to accomplish this. I've got a Swiss Army knife, a Bic lighter for seasoning the end of the paracord, and a roll of Atwood 550 cord here, same stuff we sell on our website at Self-Reliance Outfitters. It's the brand of paracord that I use for just about everything I do that I'm using paracord for. Okay, we're only gonna need about 12 feet of this paracord. So we'll go ahead and cut 12 feet off the hank. We'll go ahead and seize both ends really well. It will help on this if you take this end when you seize it and just kind of make it flat. When you melt it down, it will feed easier through between the barrels. We're gonna wrap in between the barrels as well as around both of them, and we can re-seize it later and round it off. But for now, one end is round, one end is flat. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take the end that we seized here, round, and we're gonna put just a stop knot right in that thing all the way up to as close to the edge as we can get it with just an overhand knot. And that's going to be how we start this wrapping. And the first wrap is going to go in between the two barrels. And this is the tricky part of this thing, is getting this paracord between the barrels. If you've got this good and flat, it'll go through there pretty easy. If you don't have it flat, it won't. Now, I'm going to show you a trick with your Swiss Army knife of how to get that through there a little bit faster. But the first one of these is just going to pull that stop knot all the way down to the end. And that's going to be adjusted to where you want that hand guard to start, okay? Because you're going to come around that about 4 nice flat turns. And we're going to end up using our Swiss Army knife here as kind of a frapping tool, because we're going to want to wrap this around and really give this thing a good tight pull to make sure that these wrappings are very, very tight. And then we're going to want to push up against there just like this to make sure that they're close together the way we want them before we move on. And I usually look at both sides. So now we've got 3 wraps on this side, 4 wraps on this side. When we come through here, now we're going to put a wrap through the middle. So I'm just going to lay that down flat. I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to pull out the flat tip screwdriver here on my tool and use that to help push this flat between the barrels, just like this, to feed that through. Now this is where it gets important, all right? Now what we have is this configuration. And when we come across this side, we're gonna wrap around the front, and we're gonna go through that center again on the front side. And we're keeping everything tight as we can get it all the way around as we do this. And when we come through this time, we're going to go ahead and use a frapping action again to really pull this tight. But you've almost got the pattern now that you're going to use throughout the wrapping of this forearm. So we want to make sure that we keep this thing straight and don't let it get twisted. If it starts to twist, just untwist it by hand. You want to push it up against the other wrap as best you can get it, just like this, because now this one's going to feed over the top this time to close that gap. And we're going to come in here now and treat this like a lash, and we're going to put a frapping stick or frapping tee around that with our Swiss Army knife and really give that thing a good yank. All right, so at this point now we have one over the top and one over the bottom butted up against each other. And now we're going to come over the top again and go between the barrels. You can always dress everything up when you get, before you pull it tight. Dress everything up good, butt everything up against each other. And this time you're going to come back around this direction and back up and back through. So you're going over the top and around, over the bottom and around. And this is kind of like a wrappings and frappings motion, very much like you were actually lashing something together. And I would consider this, even though it's not exactly the same thing, you can look at this as the ones going between the barrels are your frappings, and the ones going outside the barrel are your wrappings. And the reason you're doing that is to make sure that you maintain some kind of a spacer in between those two barrels to keep them separated, because paracord does tend to shrink a little bit. And the last thing you want to happen is for this thing to squeeze down tight enough that it could bend a barrel. I don't think that could ever happen, but I have heard people make that assumption before. So I'm going half the amount of fraps I am wraps, if that's the way we're going to look at this. So I'm going 4 wraps and 2 fraps. So this is my 4th time around with a wrap. And when I come around this time, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to come around this, and I'm going in between this time. And so this time we're going through here again, because these are what I would consider my frappings, going between the two things that I'm lashing, because you're basically doing kind of a shear lash here on this, so to speak. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to wrap this around, this tee around here, really give it a good yank, just to kind of tighten things up a little bit. And then this one's coming over the top and down between. Again, untwist everything as you go. Get everything pulled back and snug so that all your wrappings are tight. Before you get too far, look at things from both sides. Make sure you know where you're at, because this time you're supposed to go back this way to keep things even. And now we're on those, we've got 2 again here. So these wraps are going to go to the outside. 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to go back to the inside. Okay, so when I get to the end of this, or the end of my cordage, now I'm just going to come around here in an X. I'm going to finish this off with a clove hitch that's going to go under the X, just like this. Push everything tight. Tighten everything up as tight as I want it. Just like that. And then I can just trim that off, melt it down, and finish it any way I want to. And so once we're finished, we're going to have 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, and then whatever we've got left for our clove hitch here. And you could make that as long or short as you wanted to. Like I said, this was 12 feet of cordage, and this forearm guard is probably 8 inches long. That was made with 12 feet of cordage. So if you wanted something double that length, then you're going to need 24 feet of cordage. But that's how I do mine. Again, you know, I've had one of these that's been wrapped for over 10 years, hasn't come undone yet, and it's been fine. So I've had some requests for this. There it is. Okay, guys, well, that's just about as simple as it gets as far as wrapping one of these M6 Scouts to give yourself a grip on the fore end. Again, it's very similar to wraps and fraps the way I do it. I use my fraps for in between the barrels, my wraps around the barrels. Half the amount of fraps that I have wraps. I started with a stop knot between the barrels and ended with a clove hitch. That's just been melted off so it can't come undone. It makes the rifle look neat and tidy, and it works very, very well. I appreciate you guys joining me for this video today. I appreciate all your views. I appreciate all the things you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you get notified when I make new videos, because they are kind of random, because I do them in between teaching, in between trying to rebuild the house, in between all the other duties that I have and hats that I have to wear. But I try to get videos up and new content as often as possible. Guys, I really appreciate everything you do for me, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.